to the July meeting of the Transportation and Planning and Environment Committee. We've got our committee members on the line this morning, I believe. Got everybody coming in over the feed. So the first thing we're going to do is go ahead and introduce the table, and then we'll introduce our committee members who are online. If we want to start over in the corner.
Good morning, Tim Porter, Chief Urban Forester.
Alicia Osborne, Planning, Development, Design.
Good morning, Andy Mock with CATS, Senior Project Manager for the Link Silver Line.
Good morning, John Lewis with CATS.
Taiwo Joba, City Manager's Office.
Good morning, Julie Eisel, Committee Chair.
And good morning, Donata Jackson, Office of Constituent Services.
Would you like to introduce yourself? Thank you. And who do we have online?
Good morning, Larkin Eggleston, Vice Chair.
Ed Driggs, Committee Member.
Good
morning, Matt Newton, Committee Member.
Joe Braxton.
Braxton Winston Committee.
Thank you. Who else, what other staff members do we have on? I see Allison.
Yeah, Allison Craig, Deputy Planning Director.
Anyone else?
Kelly Goforth with CATS.
And Liz is online.
And who?
Liz Babson.
Oh, and Liz, are you
Liz
there?
Babs, Transportation.
Great.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can. Now we can, yeah. Thanks, Liz.
I'm going to try another connection.
So this morning we have a...
Sorry, I don't know if you already called for non-committee members. This is Victoria.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't see you there, Victoria. We have Councilmember Watlington on. Any other council members? Okay. With that, we'll go ahead and get started. We have, as always, a very packed agenda. So the first thing we're going to get into is the first agenda item is review of the Silver Line. And we have here this morning John Lewis from CATS, Director of CATS, and Andy Mott from CATS, who are going to present an overview on the progress of the Silver Line, where we are to date. So I'll let you go ahead and take that away, John.
Very good. Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the committee and anyone else from the public who may be watching, it's a pleasure to be here with you this morning to give you an overview of what is a very exciting project for us at CATS, the Link Silver Line project. We go to the next slide, please. Over the last decade or so, CATS has been working very hard to deliver on the original vision of the CATS 2030 system plan. Since the opening of the South Corridor, the Blue Line, in 2018, the Blue Line extension was opened. We've also worked diligently to continue moving the Gold Line forward. We are phase one of the Gold Line was open in the summer of 2015. Phase two is under construction and will open by the end of this year. And we have also completely redesigned our bus system through our Envision My Ride program. That was implemented in 2018 and focused on three basic tenets. Moving away from an old, outdated hub and spoke system to more of a grid system that minimized the need for large numbers of our customers to transfer from one bus to another to get to from their origin to their destination. That was implemented in 2018, and as I mentioned, was based on three tenets: getting the structure of our system right, focusing and investing in additional bus frequency, and then working on the efficiency of our system through different programs like bus-only lanes, bus rapid transit, that we will continue to roll out in the coming years. We're working on another exciting project, the Charlotte Gateway Station, which will move Amtrak service from the outskirts of the city into a new multimodal hub on Graham Street that will include not only Amtrak, but the Silver Line project will go through there and be a nexus for the Gold Line also. And where the infrastructure portion of that project has been underway and is moving on schedule. We are working now with a private developer who will deliver the vertical vision of that multimodal station. And now we are continuing to move forward with the vision of the Silver Line, which has been working through the planning process. A locally preferred alternative for the corridor was adopted by the Metropolitan Transit Commission, and now we're moving into preliminary design and engineering of the project. Andy Mock, who is the project manager for the Silver Line, and his team have been working over the last several months. Despite the challenges brought about by the health crisis, we continue to move forward with design work, and we're finding different ways to interact with the public to ensure that we bring the public along with us in this important design phase. I'm going to turn it over to Andy, who will go through a more detailed presentation on where we are with the Silver Line design effort and the process forward as we continue to interact not only with committee members, but also with the public on this project. Next slide, Andy.
Thank you, John. Just to orient and remind the committee what the Silver Line is. The Silver Line is a program. It's actually a suite of 3 programs, including design, meaning the brick and mortar, the light rail, the tracks, the power systems, but also the vision and land use that goes along with that. And that's the second part of it. That's the TOD planning study. That looks at land use patterns around the stations and makes recommendations for how those patterns ought to be adjusted with the incorporation of the Silver Line. That spans not just in the city of Charlotte, but also outside the city of Charlotte to our partner groups outside of the city. And there's also a rail trail study which seeks to identify a vision for rail trail that goes along the entire length of the Link Silver Line. The current scope of the Silver Line is starts in Belmont in the west and then traverses along or adjacent to Wilkinson Boulevard the whole way from Belmont to Center City, then goes past Charlotte Gateway, past 4th Ward, 3rd Ward, 4th Ward, 1st Ward, around the northern edge of Center City, then parallels Independence Boulevard the whole way out to the Village Lake area, transitioning from Independence to a Monroe Road alignment near the Village Lake area, and then the current locally preferred alternative terminates at Matthews, at CPCC Levine and Matthews. However, we are evaluating and intend to identify a new alignment that goes the whole way to Indian Trail as requested. Next slide, please. So the first phase of this project really consists of 3 different things, 3 major priorities. And that is, first and foremost, stakeholder engagement. That is meeting with all of our folks who have a major interest in the project. That includes Belmont, Stallings, Indian Trail, Matthews, all the City of Charlotte departments and components, and also our third parties such as NCDOT and CSX Railroad, Norfolk Southern, all the folks who have an interest in the project. Next is public involvement. So we've had a first round of public involvement. Unfortunately, it had to be truncated because of coronavirus, but we continue to keep engaging the public on a weekly basis. And an alignment refinement, which is more the engineering component of it and the environmental analysis that you would imagine for a project of this nature. Next slide. To talk a little bit more in detail on those 3 priorities, this slide shows the stakeholder engagement that we've conducted over there from the beginning in January up through May, and actually it's ongoing. So as you see, we've been engaging with all of our municipal stakeholders, the City of Belmont, Town of Matthews, Stallings, Indian Trail, some institutional stakeholders such as Belmont Abbey and CPCC, private developers, including the Cedar Yards developers, developers up and down the alignment have a major interest in the project. Of course, Charlotte Airport is a major stakeholder and partner of the Silver Line. Railroad, CSX, Norfolk Southern, all our hospital partners. We have several hospitals that are adjacent to the Silver Line. Very important for us to closely coordinate with them as they continue to plan for their ultimate layout. So those conversations really kind of manifest themselves in stakeholder interviews where we would sit down with folks and kind of let them tell us what their vision of their campus or their area is and how can the Silver Line complement that. And also to tell us all their concerns with the locally preferred alternative so that we seek to try to address them. Next slide. For public involvement, I did mention that we did have two meetings. In the first round of public meetings, we planned to have 6, but of course it had to be truncated. We had one in the town of Matthews and one in Center City. And then when the coronavirus kind of struck, we did pivot to more of a virtual engagement. Since then, we've had a number of focused neighborhood community virtual engagement sessions where we provided presentations with all the project management staff, basically the same presentation that we were able to give to the public. We also had an online survey, had over 275 survey results filled out, and we did do a virtual public meeting presentation that voiced over in the government channel studios, where all the project managers gave their voiceover of the presentation, put that on the government channel, and then an Ask Cats Q&A process that we did with myself and the TOD project manager. Next slide. This just kind of shows some of the attendance and engagement. We received about 75 to 80 folks attended the Matthews, all positive, very exciting. And then the open house we had in Uptown was also very well attended. We had that at the library in Center City. That was very well attended. I had it over lunch, and a lot of people came to kind of look at the alignments and the maps and put sticky notes on it and tell us where they live and all their concerns. And we continue to seek to address those and look for multiple ways to try to continue to engage the public during this time. Next slide. So on the refining the alignment, so this is just something that we kind of like to always say is like, why do we need to do this? Why do we need to keep looking at the alignment? And one of the things we like to talk about is that there's been changes in the corridor. Some of the parts of the corridor really haven't been studied since 2015 or 16 in the southeast corridor. And so there have been changes, and buildings have been built in the way of the alignment, and we continue to look at those changes in the corridor to determine if those are the best and most appropriate alignment decisions and station decisions for the community and for the Silver Line program. Engineering evaluation is always a major consideration. We need to continue to take the latest and best techniques, engineering and planning techniques, to ensure that the alignment is not only very operable and very straightforward to engineer and design and construct as possible, and also to seek federal funds, as this project will be intended to be an FTA-funded project. Environmental consideration is also very critical for us because, as I mentioned before, we will be seeking federal funds, so they will have to go through a NEPA, National Environmental Policy Act study to ensure that we understand the environmental implications of the project. Lessons learned from the Blue Line. This is very important. Not just there's the broader lessons learned from the land use patterns, but there's also a lot of technical lessons learned. Folks who've worked on the Blue Line, such as myself for 20 years, bring a lot of experience to the table. So we wanted to take a kind of pause button and really write down what did we learn over 20 years of light rail construction and planning and design, so we can take those best lessons and apply them to the Silver Line. And then just building in some time so we can do some coordination with all the many NCDOT projects and land use projects that are continuing every day out there adjacent to the Silver Line. Next slide. So what have we been doing? So I kind of mentioned a little bit, but we did have our kickoff in January. That was with all the stakeholders came in and did presentations for what they thought, what they kind of educated us. The stakeholders educated us about what's going on in their community so that we can understand that and have the benefit of that. And then, we wrote that down. There was a lot of good takeaways from that. We had our first alignment refinement workshop in the February timeframe. And really what that was is we went through the locally preferred alternative and kind of identified any risks and uncertainties of the locally preferred alternative. What are we not 100% sure about? And if we're not 100% sure about it, we identified options that could potentially mitigate those risks and uncertainties. And then we ran that through with all of our stakeholder groups to ensure that we're all on the same page for those options and what are the risks and uncertainties or missed opportunities that the LPA did not fully account for. Next slide. This just shows a couple pictures of in-progress work. We brought all the stakeholders together, it was a good collaborative process. We had over 100 people attend that first workshop. So very good, positive progress and a lot of input. Next slide. We then had our round of public meetings. As I mentioned, that was in the March timeframe. We've had a number of alignments and options brought to our steering team that they provide broader guidance that includes, it's chaired by John Lewis. And so we've been looping in our city leadership as we go along through the project development phase. The next step was our urban design workshops, where we took all the options in the LPA and locally preferred alternative and came up with some development visions and scenarios around those options, so that we had the benefit of really understanding what sort of TOD and urban design improvements can we expect along with these options to help us make the best and most appropriate decisions as it relates to alignments and stations. Next slide. From that, we kind of came up with these 6 focus areas. I don't know if the committee members can see this. Well, we kind of broke up, because the project is so big, it's so massive, it's fundamentally almost 3 times as big as any one of the Blue Line or Blue Line extensions. And so it's a lot to get your head around. So we kind of broke it up into 6 focus areas. And that's also the way we present this to the public as well. So that, it's not just this giant 26-mile project. It's actually 6, hopefully more bite-sized chunks. And within those focus areas, there's a list of decisions to be made, and we're working through that decision-making process right now. So this just kind of shows kind of the broader view of how we're trying to tackle this giant project. Next slide. We can just quickly go through. This just shows some in-progress work products. I mean, the message here is that we've spent a lot of time and energy trying to go through the LPA and the options that are on the table with all of our partner groups, including planning and general services and CDOT and NCDOT and all the railroad parties and stakeholders to really get down to what is the best potential project we can put forward. Next slide. This is, again, more in progress work, a lot of workshops, we really kind of, I feel like we got into some really interesting virtual platforms to do this, because most of this was done during, a COVID stay-at-home order. So we investigated some really interesting platforms, allowed us to be collaborative in a remote setting. It was, I thought it was very well received. Next slide. And again, more work progress as we just keep going, keep drilling down to the most appropriate station alignment. Next slide. So where we are now, or where we were at the end of July, is we've kind of been through those alignments. We've kind of gone through what we're calling the scorecard, which is our decision-making process that we've identified, and populating metrics. We've gone through all the options with our steering team and identified a short list of alignments and stations that we feel like are most appropriate to take out to a public meeting in September. There were some alignments that were removed from consideration. Those were mostly very high risk and very uncertain alignments that really created a lot of concerns about our ability to deliver the project. So those short list options were presented to our steering team on July 10th for concurrence. We're now in the process of doing elected official outreach and stakeholder outreach. So we're going to look to find some time on certain councilmen's calendars to ensure that folks are aware of what the alignments that are on the table, especially in some sensitive areas along the project. So we'll be reaching out to folks over the next month or two before our public meetings in September. All right, next slide. So that gets into the big next thing is our public meetings. So we have some dates that we're locking in. We're starting in September 15th. We have 6 public meetings going on over 2.5 weeks, all virtual on a virtual platform. I don't know the dates right off the top of my head, but we will issue out notification to council of those dates. They'll all be virtual, and there'll be 1 focus area per meeting. So we have 6 focus areas and six virtual meetings over those 2.5 weeks. And at that, we will be presenting the shortlisted alternatives that are out there for input on those before we go forward with any more further engineering evaluation. We're also entering into early scoping, which is a FTA NEPA process that we have to follow to go into that environmental phase. Once we receive public input, then we'll be on all the alternatives. We'll be layering in additional information, survey and engineering evaluation planning, more stakeholder engagement, with a third round of public meetings in the December timeframe. From that, we then would present the public meeting, the alignment in which we intend to take to the Metropolitan Transit Commission in February and March of next year for adoption. Next slide. Okay. So just to give a little bit, I mentioned something about decision making. And so this process, we entered into kind of an engagement process with our stakeholders and kind of really started to drill down to how are we going to make some of these decisions. They're very big decisions. And all these decisions should be, you think about this as the LPA is the base, and then there's an option that we're evaluating. And the only reason that we're evaluating is to evaluate against benefits and risks compared to the locally preferred alternative. And so the three benefits that we're evaluating against locally preferred alternative are, one, a competitive and reliable travel time. We want our Silver Line to be a great operating project, and we want to make sure it's competitive as possible, and reliable. Second is to promote equitable TOD, or transit-oriented development. So we want to make sure that the secondary benefits of the Silver Line are most appropriate to the goals of the community. And it's not just the goals of the City of Charlotte community, but it's the goals of the town of Matthews, the City of Belmont, the town of Stallings, and Indian Charlotte. And each one of those communities kind of have their own lens on what equitable transit-oriented development is. And we want to improve access to destinations and local connectivity. So we want to make sure that it's easy for folks to get to education, work, home, jobs, those sort of things. So the stations and the layout of the stations needs to be well positioned to provide good access to the community. But all that's balanced against risks, because we are moving more of a implementation philosophy. So we want to make sure that we're putting ourselves forward in a project that we can deliver. So one of the big risks is dependency on other projects and third parties. We don't want to, as best we're able to, tie ourselves to other projects that have unknown timelines or some third-party stakeholder who could delay the project. So that's weighed, along with capital and operating costs. That's always a very big deal for us to make sure that we have the best operating railroad and we can, afford to operate on a daily basis. And also, capital, since this will be a competitive project. And all that, and of course, environmental screening, because that's a very big deal for us, and it has impacts on community impacts, visual impacts, all the issues that we'll have to look at as far as the environmental impacts process. Next slide. So how do we describe this? Because as I said, the project is so big, it's so complex, and it's very hard for people, unless you're in it 50 to 60 hours a week, to really understand the nuances and the interrelations. So we developed what we call a scorecard, and behind all these check marks is a lot of data and metrics which kind of lead you to that check mark. This is just a sample of what a scorecard could look like. But this kind of shows the locally alternative on the left, and we would then be comparing the benefits and risks as a simple check mark versus a sample design option A, a sample design option B, so that we can explain to council and to the community why we made the decision we made. Because, and without getting into a lot of detail, unless folks want to get into the detail, and we'll have that available for them if they so choose. The yellow box kind of indicates what we call a key driving variable. Sometimes it's one thing, and it's whether you can get a third party to agree or not. That's going to drive the day and win the day, and that just kind of indicates that kind of key driving variable concept that we'll be weighing and presenting as we move forward. Next slide. So upcoming engagement. So of course today we are here at the Transportation Planning and Environmental Committee. We will be, as I said, we will be seeking individual council outreach for sensitive areas along the Silver Line, so please stay tuned on that. We'll have ongoing virtual community meetings. We have one on Thursday with Fremore West and Wesley Heights. And so we'll continue seeking to get those public engagement leading up to the public meetings in mid to late September. We will do some we intend to do some special community outreach after the second round of public meetings, because there are some sensitive areas that's going to require a little more closer coordination with the communities that are directly affected. And then, of course, we'll be open to other council engagements in the future, whether that be presentations or dinner briefings or whatever is deemed to be the appropriate method to do that. Next slide. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Sandy. I do have a couple questions, and then I've got a couple of council members as well. One question a lot of people have asked, has COVID caused any delays to the process, aside from having to pivot on the way you were doing things?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the biggest, it's not been as streamlined as far as stakeholder engagement. I think we've done a pretty good job of reaching out to folks, but I think it has been more strained to get everyone on the same page. You know, there's something about being in the same room and standing around a map and, you know, everyone be able to draw on their concepts. I don't know if I can quantify that in time, but I think there is an efficiency that we've lost by not being in the same room.
Okay.
But I think we've done the best job we could possibly do to try to minimize that.
Okay. The second question I have is, when you talk about the land acquisition, land use around the planned line, as council members, you know, we've had discussions about when we can buy land around the Silver Line to preserve for affordable housing. But that has a lot to do with federal funds, correct? So what is the timing on that, when we can start? Because my concern is, once we're at that point and developers know that, you know, we're always behind the 8 ball, right? So is there a way that we can sort of plan for that before people take advantage of it, and then the cost becomes so cost prohibitive for us to be able to buy that land?
Sure. I think it's a great question, and one that has been first and foremost in our minds as a planning team, but also with the Metropolitan Transit Commission. The MTC gave CATS the ability and set aside some funds for early acquisition of property that we know would be an issue or a critical issue for us as we move forward. And we've already made some strategic purchases of property. As we continue to refine the corridor, the most important aspect of this is where we place stations, and that will drive what is the identification of critical properties. So as we continue to work through this process and really determine where these stations will be, that will give us opportunities to work with council, to work with our partners on the steering team to not only identify critical properties, search for partnerships in that, and to the extent leverage not only CATS funding, but other available sources to acquire those critical pieces as early as possible.
Okay, so it really is about the station placement in terms of the value. Interesting. And the third question I have is, in that alignment process, what was the feedback? Are you still continuing to get feedback? And have you changed any thoughts along the lines of the airport alignment and the uptown alignment?
Well, so we continue to receive input, you know, all the time from our stakeholders. So there certainly has been new alignments that have been through that stakeholder process, which have come about that we're continuing to evaluate and measure. So I would say that yes, there has been through the stakeholder process been some potential alignments that have been put forward that we're evaluating. We haven't made any final decisions, and we're in the decision-making process. But yes, some of that stakeholder engagement has caused us to look at other alternatives.
If I could also add to that, when we're saying alignments, we're saying alignments with a small a in that. The overall alignment of the Silver Line has been set through the locally preferred alternative. But in one of the slides, Andy showed how we've broken the big project down into 6 focus areas, and within those focus areas, it may be a switch of the alignment in terms of should we be on one side of a street or the other? Should we go through this property or that property? So really when we're talking about those kind of inputs and those changes, it's really at the fine level of the changes. Tweaking the alignment, not any major change in the corridor.
So that is done. Where it's going is done. It's a matter of tweaking if it goes a little bit to the right or the left or up and down. Okay. Okay, thank you. We've got a couple council members. Mr. Eggleston will go first, and then Mr. Driggs.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Some of my questions were similar to yours and somewhat answered already. And I think that last bit of information there is pretty clarifying that what we're talking about is not necessarily drastically different alignment options, but nuances. But I do take the point, too, that the stations themselves are what's going to drive real estate values and development patterns and things like that as much as the rail itself. So, I do hope, and Taiwo, I think this is a takeaway for you because it's not a TAP issue per se, but as you lead the planning department, I do hope that we are looking in advance at the opportunities we have for affordable housing or rail trail or any kind of greenway opportunities, any of the opportunities to achieve any of the things that we've set as priorities and goals, because once that exact alignment and the exact station areas are identified, the land cost quickly, if not immediately, becomes cost prohibitive for us to do a lot of the things we want. And we've seen that at times with the Blue Line. So I hope we're being very forward thinking there. Also wondering too, and I know there's restrictions around federal state dollars and what we can spend them on and when. Are there opportunities for us to purchase options on some of this stuff before we know definitively whether we need it? I heard you say at one point in the presentation that buildings have been built, I think you said on the alignment in the time since this project was undertaken. I don't know if that means you've had to adjust the alignment because of those buildings, or you meant more along the alignment, but is there a way to buy temporary options on certain parcels to hold folks from building on them if they're so willing to sell us that option, so that we don't have to keep going back to the drawing board and then potentially increasing our cost in that way?
Yeah, so I'll take that. So there have been instances where buildings were built in the way, and we have had to make adjustments to the alignment to address those, or to basically mitigate those impacts. A normal right-of-way acquisition usually begins at the completion of the environmental impact statement. That's the way the normal, and then we do have the right to do advanced acquisitions, but the normal acquisition process occurs at the completion of the environmental process.
Is advanced acquisition a code word for eminent domain?
No.
No, we don't have the ability to take, but there were a couple of properties. One, as we were crossing the Norfolk Southern alignment in Uptown adjacent to the Gateway Station. We knew that was going to be a critical juncture, so we went ahead and negotiated a acquisition of that property. There may be other instances in the future where it's just very clear that one property or another is going to be a challenge, and so we will go ahead and try to address that as quickly as possible. As Andy mentioned, as we go further down into the design process, know where stations are, we'll have to evaluate what is the best time to go after acquisition. We also have to understand early acquisition is a bit of risk if we don't move the project forward. And so once we get into further levels of design and get into the next phase, it then allows us to be able to be reimbursed for some of those acquisitions. And so it's not just the timing, but also the color of money and how we are acquiring any potential property.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Driggs?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess this is for Taiwo. I'm wondering if our zoning approvals are going to be kind of predicated on information about where the line is going to be. I mean, are we going to keep approving new projects that require adjustments, or can we now start protecting the corridor?
So, thank you, Councilman Rodriguez. Important question. As we do with every rezoning petition, we send them to our CART's colleagues to review them, and usually we will get comments back for the ones that are adjacent to Silver Line. So we will be kind of like we had a conversation with folks on Ballantyne Reimagine with regards to the extension of Blue Line into Ballantyne. That's the same approach we're taking with rezoning petitions along this corridor.
And we're talking around the subject of property acquisitions and not letting ourselves get into the position of not being able to have affordable housing along the line, when that's one of the reasons that we want the line. Could you talk in more detail about how that works? So does the city have the ability to do land purchases? Like, can we just decide to commit some of our trust fund money or other money to land acquisition? And this would not be land acquisition needed for the Silver Line. This would be sites along the Silver Line that we want to control for future development. How does that work?
So I'm going to give an example of a Councilmember Driggs, of a station in a particular location that we may think would be not only good from a transportation standpoint, but also give us an opportunity to locate affordable housing. CATS has the ability, using federal money, to acquire property for stations. It may be that we may need 10 acres, and I'm making up numbers, generally to fit a station, a parking lot if necessary, depending on where it is, and may have the ability to use excess land for other purposes. I would hope one of the lessons learned from the Blue Line and the Blue Line extension are, as early as we possibly can, to look for opportunities to leverage our federal investment with some other funding sources. As you mentioned, Council Member, maybe there's an opportunity to leverage other sources of funds to acquire land more than what we would need just for a station. But I don't know what are the limits to other sources of funding, and I wouldn't want to conjecture what we might be able to do with other sources. But we do have the ability, and we hope we will be able to leverage those opportunities to reach other goals beyond just the mobility goals.
Right. Madam Chair, I would suggest that we identify as a topic the question of where we might want to make strategic acquisitions and how the funding for that would work in our overall housing strategy. I mean, we have the money that we put into the trust fund. We would need to think about when we buy the land, how long we're likely to have to bank it before the line itself is actually there. But I can tell you that the way the market works, there's a pretty efficient process through which the value of that land goes up as the reality of the Silver Line comes nearer. So our challenge is to try to stay a step ahead of that instead of finding ourselves shut out later.
Absolutely, it's a great point.
Last question. When we approved the initial funding, it was 50-something million, I think, for early design and so on. We were looking at kind of a fairly detailed diagram of stages and activity in the different stages, and when this funding, that initial funding, would be used. Have there been any material changes in the kind of that planning environment since we made that initial allocation?
So initially I mean, the phasing has not really changed. I will say that given some of the stakeholder engagement, we are evaluating when we can begin the second phase, which is the more of the engineering phase. We may overlap them a little bit to try to mitigate against some of the maybe the slide and the MTC action that we might need to have. So the work has not changed. It's the progression of the work that we're evaluating to mitigate against maybe any schedule delays that we may have seen in the first phase.
So in particular, I would just like to know, especially as budget chair, as early as possible about what needs can be identified, what funding requirements are likely along what timeline, because there's no question that this ultimately is a huge commitment, and we still don't really know how all that's going to work. So I would just ask you if there are changes, for example, in what we already approved, or if you see the next requirement taking shape. It's not good for us to be in a position where we get asked to make a decision when there really isn't any choice. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Driggs. I think next we have Mr. Winston.
Thank you. I have 4 questions or comments, kind of riffing off of what everybody else has already said. Since the alignment won't change significantly, how do we move forward with appropriate zoning around the alignment ahead of construction? How can we do some of the TOD zoning, for instance, ahead of time to start the type of development we want to see as this process is going?
So part of our, again, one of our priorities of this early phase, and part of the aspects of the project is the TOD planning study. That group will be making recommendations not only for TOD and zoning improvements associated with the station, but also making recommendations and identifying opportunities for affordable housing. That was building on a previous comment that was made. So coming out of that planning process, there will be some recommendations from the TOD planning group or project, which will influence and guide some potential zoning opportunities and also affordable housing opportunities.
Thank you. How do we socialize those that already live, work, and play along the alignment to participate in more mobility options? I think we're going to talk about that a little later possibly, but as Mr. Eggleston said, how do we get them kind of getting away from car-centric modes of transportation to thinking about greenways, bikes, buses, ride shares, and things like that now?
Great question. I think 2 things. That there would be a pre-COVID answer, and we're trying to figure out what the post-COVID answer is going to be. The pre-COVID answer, it would have been to ensure that the alignment gives you reliable and efficient travel times. The thing that drives ridership on rail is you know exactly what the length of your trip is going to be, no matter what time you take the service, what the weather may be, what traffic conditions. The reliability of rail always beats the vagaries of driving in a car. That's pre-COVID. I don't think any of us know what the environment is, how it's going to change the commuting environment. And so we know what the benefits of this investment from a rail standpoint in terms of travel times, efficiency, and reliability. What am I comparing that against into the future? And I think that is the unknown that we still have to work through.
So my third question, it relates to, I understand that there are concerns around depending on third parties and delays those things can bring, but there are also third parties that we really need to buy into this. Next month in Intergovernmental Relations Committee, we will be having a joint meeting with Mecklenburg County's IG Committee around mobility. So Ty, I think we should definitely share some of the conversations that we've been having with the TAPE committee. But I just kind of wanted to put it out there. The 2 parties I'm really most concerned with including is CMS and Mecklenburg County. I hope CMS will see the importance of integrating future school construction and planning around the Silver Line, and the same for Met County and social services. Are we working on any type of consolidated approach or framework for Silver Line specific to our 3 entities together?
So I think maybe it would make good sense for us, this presentation focus on the design and engineering of the Silver Line. Perhaps we should bring our planning team that's working on the TOD study that is happening at the same time to have these kinds of discussions. I think we have the right groups at the table that are participating. in that study, it would probably be good to have an update on the types of issues that they're evaluating and get some idea of what their thoughts are as we move forward on this. I don't want to give you an answer that is not informed just yet.
Thank you. I think that would be a good thing, and I definitely understand. We're having a conversation around design, but get into the weeds a little bit. My last point, comment, question is around equity. I think as we consider equity in this design and development, it must go beyond affordable housing. I believe I feel like we need to adopt a restorative development plan for the Silver Line. Some will call this reparations. This is the land that will be developed and exponentially increase existing generational wealth. This will also be the entryway for folks for new wealth to be formed. This alignment also cuts through the neighborhoods most affected by the City of Charlotte's urban renewal efforts, also known as Negro removal. We owe it to our citizens to figure out a restorative approach to this Silver Line. I want to see a plan of how we are going to ensure Black home ownership and Black business ownership exists and is strengthened and is a priority along the development and design of the Silver Line.
I think the timing's great on that point, Mr. Winston. We have the ability, because we can't move forward with land acquisition quite yet. It's good time to come up with plans so that when we can, we have a plan ready to go. So thank you for that. With that, we are going to move to the next topic area, if I can get my agenda back up. We're going to move for a review, a brief update on the comprehensive vision plan. So that sort of is a good segue. And I'm going to turn it over to Taiwo and Alicia Osborne for an update on the plan.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think I'll let Alicia go in the interest of time. But this is kind of a summary of where we've been and what we plan to do. Also with the drive-in theater style engagement in the fall. But the next TAP meeting, we're going to come to you with a more robust engagement where we will talk about fiscal impact analysis that we've been doing. So this is almost laying the groundwork for that next session. So.
Thank you, Taiwo, for the opening remarks, and Madam Pro Tem and other council members for the opportunity to provide an update. To take a deeper dive on some of the information we presented at the July 6th council meeting a few weeks ago. As a quick reminder, the comprehensive plan will be our shared vision for growth and development and transformative investments for the next 20 years. Next slide. The project is divided into 4 phases. Phase 1 and 2 establish the foundation for the plan, reviewing existing conditions, demographics, growth trends, assets, and opportunities. But this plan has to be different. Charlotte is the 15th largest city in the U.S. and has a legacy of planning and investment that has shown us some great success. But it has also revealed some great inequity in past policies, development, patterns, investments, and even how we engage our community and how we grow and develop. The Equity Atlas was established in Phase 1 and is a key component of the comp plan that helped us to establish a data-driven approach in applying equity in our engagement, developing the plan policies, and implementation, which we're currently developing now in Phase 3 of the plan. Phase 4 is review and adoption of the plan. Next slide. Engagement continues to be paramount to this process. I know Andy talked a lot about the engagement on the Silver Line. There are other planning initiatives that we're leveraging their engagement processes. And we've had to be creative in these uncertain times, particularly around COVID-19, and be more intentional and creative in how we bridge the gap between our traditional voices in the planning process and those who have been historically underrepresented in the planning process. Engagement processes such as the Growing Better Places board game, where hundreds of our residents talked about our growth strategy, to pop-up events and online surveys, were all ways of receiving kind of the summary that you see on the slide here. We also have a 360-member strategic advisory group that have given us feedback on key themes to organize our vision around: neighborhoods, affordability and access to affordable housing, mobility, access to goods and services, and opportunity, access to opportunity, jobs, and employment. Next slide. At the end of the day, our residents want to see an authentic, equitable, integrated, and resilient Charlotte that is inclusive, diverse, livable, connected, healthy, prosperous, and has a strong regional presence. Next slide. So how do all the pieces fit together within the plan? How does this organization help us get there? How do all the pieces fit together? This is the plan framework, which builds on the guiding principle and vision elements that you saw in the previous slide, and that we'll use to create our shared vision. A key component of this is the equitable growth framework, which builds on the equity atlas developed in phase 1 of the comp plan, and is a methodology for measuring access to daily needs and services, and will be used to inform the framework policies, supporting policies, projects, and programs, and to identify priorities for future community planning and future capital investment. This plan framework also includes a fiscal impact analysis, which is a little different than for our planning processes, that will give us a high-level analysis of the operational costs to accommodate our projected growth. We'll invite our consultants, economic and planning systems, and to present their findings to this body in September. In the next couple of slides, I want to walk through some key components of the equitable growth framework, draft policies, and our initial thoughts about how we plan in the future. Our team is extremely excited about this part of the plan. We recently shared it with ambassadors and strategic advisors 2 weeks ago and had a really robust discussion virtually. Excitement is around us beginning to assign numbers to the narrative about equity, vulnerability, and displacement in our community. The Equitable Growth Framework builds on the Equity Atlas and provides 4 metrics to help us better understand how vulnerable populations are impacted in relation to access to daily needs, choices for housing, a diversity of employment, and safety and healthy environments. These 4 metrics include a series of indicators that will create a population vulnerable to displacement overlay to help us better understand where these populations are vulnerable to displacements are concentrated. Major contributors to vulnerability to displacement across Charlotte are poverty, educational attainment, race, and age. At the end of the day, this data will help us establish what are our greatest needs and issues, how and where to prioritize our limited resources, and how to ensure cost benefits are equitable. Next slide. The plan includes 10 big policy ideas to respond to the emerging themes, vision goals that were expressed by the community. And they're pretty much organized in 4 big categories: mobility, neighborhoods, health, environment, economic resilience, and opportunity. In our later meetings, we'll walk through more of these, but I'll just highlight some of the transformative policies that we're thinking about. In terms of housing and diversity, we're thinking about eliminating exclusionary single-family zoning to allow housing diversity everywhere. The 10-minute neighborhood is where people are envisioned to be able to get to essential goods and services within 10 minutes of a walk, bike, or quick, safe transit ride. And we're also thinking about developing a robust network of co-ops, community gardens, and neighborhood-based food sharing. The integrated natural environment, we're thinking about and working with our partners at ULI and American Cities for Climate Change to create a resilience innovation district overlay to promote the strategic energy action plan goals in creating carbon neutrality within our community. Another good policy idea we're thinking about is retaining our identity and charm. We've heard from citizens that as Charlotte changes and grows, how do we remain uniquely Charlotte? How do we keep those things that keep us competitive as well as unique as we grow? So we're thinking about protect naturally occurring cultural districts especially in our underserved communities. We've seen this in NODA, where our artist community has been displaced, South End, and now we have a new district in North End where they're celebrating that our cultural fabric of the community. And lastly, I wanted to speak about the fiscally responsible idea, where we want to create a culture of developer community collaboration through community benefits agreements, and also thinking about community benefit investments in our community to accommodate the growth in a more fiscally responsible way. Next slide. A key component of moving forward also creating a vision for Charlotte is rethinking how we do community plans. Right now we have over 100 plans. Some of them are 20 to 30 years old, and so we have to think about how do we plan in the future, and we'll provide guidance for that in the comprehensive plan. Next slide. Next slide. So in terms of small area planning, we want to include establishing an approach to modernize our land use policy that responds to how our community wants to grow, in terms of creating complete neighborhoods that focus on design, character, and form, and connections to goods and services. The focus of this will be introducing the types of places, or a new tool called Place Types that talks about how do we create new communities, or new complete communities. Next slide. Within the plan, we will adopt the place type palette, or the policy guidance for establishing the types of places we want to see in the community, to support the vision and work closely with the community to map them after plan adoption in 2021, and then begin the small area process in 2022. Next slide. Looking ahead, we will continue to meet with our ambassadors and strategic advisors in August. August 26th is our next meeting, where we'll talk about draft plan recommendations. We'll also kick off a series of virtual focus group discussions, being really intentional about engaging our target audiences and groups that aren't traditionally involved in the process. We're also rethinking the board game and introducing a card game instead that is more accessible. We'll first have an online version where residents can download an app and play with their friends and family or with other users. And we'll also have a physical card game later on in the fall, around October, where people can play with their families and friends. Also working with a local artist to create a coloring sheet, again trying to target those audiences, our youth population who aren't always involved in planning. Then leading up to our drive-in community workshop, which is a new idea and a new way to engage our community safely in this environment. And we will have our draft plan document for release in October, and continue to come before this group in September, council in October, and engage our planning commission on a monthly basis as well as we move forward. Next slide, and I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Lisa, I have a question about the engagement. And I think we talked about this a year or so ago, 2 years before the comp plan started, but there are those programs out there, like I think MetroQuest is one of them, that really does have that virtual program, so that it's not a game, but it's a simulation that the community can put input into. Have we thought about that, especially in this COVID environment? Having something like that the community could participate in?
So we've been hosting a series of virtual engagement activities using public input, which serves as a virtual platform. Similar functions, it just appears a little differently. Our next exercise that we'll release this week will have interactive maps around the equitable growth framework, so the community can look at the maps, see the different metrics, provide comments and pinpoints, and give us real tangible data to move forward in the plan. So it's a similar, public input is a similar tool to MetroQuest with similar functions, just a different platform.
Is it one, though, that if you sort of you have your own simulation, so that if you said you wanted to create a park in this place, that's what it could look like, and then you see yourself how it impacts traffic, how it impacts everything else. There's
Like an augmented reality.
exactly. I thought that's what the MetroQuest program really was.
So we are partnered with UNC Charlotte, and we have a grant to create those platforms where, as we're talking about place types, people can actually visually see what that might look like on
Right.
the ground. So that's also in progress.
Okay.
So, yeah, so I think I was going to jump in and say that what Alicia just said. So MetroQuest is great, but they will still have to depend on us to get a lot of the local information. What UNCC is partnering with us on, which we got a grant for, actually has a lot of that already that we can use. So it's almost like you're building your own city, so to speak. So I think we just got a grant.
We just got it a couple months ago.
Yeah, so we're working with UNCC to have that same feel as MetroQuest, that same platform as MetroQuest, where people can, at home or at work, individually be able to move things around with minimal technical or staff explanation.
See the impact.
Yeah.
I think that's really important, because as we talk about things like traffic and whatnot, people can really see the impact that has. That takes a long time to learn and to really understand. And that leads to my next question. We keep having this conversation in our rezoning meetings about the consequences of rapid development in particular areas like Steel Creek, when you've got a road that is state-owned, like 160, or Providence Road, when you have development in that area, and we continue to allow development, but we have no remedy for the traffic congestion in that it's a state road and we can't really change it. So does the comprehensive vision plan take that into account when you say, well, here's our growth patterns, here's our place types, here's where we see multifamily growing, whatnot, when in fact, we don't know the future of change for traffic congestion on those roads?
Want me to take that?
Yeah.
I think I know where your question is headed.
Yeah.
Alicia referred to the fiscal impact analysis, which we really want to discuss with you at length at the September TAP meeting, because it has a number of fiscal impact ideas, such as community benefit investment, where you cannot just build without thinking of the impact on the community. Right now, we typically will assess developers based on specific development, but we don't often think of the impact of that development on the community.
Yeah.
And so, but I just don't want to take that as a singular item. There are so many other factors that come into play when we have this conversation. Hence the reason why I like us to have that when our fiscal impact analysis consultant comes in September and be able to really lay that out for you.
Okay.
But we are definitely thinking about that, because you can't talk growth without talking development. And
Right.
and really, if our projection is telling us that over 200,000 more people will be added to Charlotte in another 20 years, and the same number of jobs, right? We need to start thinking differently about how the development industry partners with us on mitigating the impact of this development.
Right. And I guess my point to that was that there's this, there's a component to it that we can't control, and that's when it's a state-owned road. So if all 200,000 are going to Steel Creek, we got a problem if there is no plan to widen 160, or, that's what I'm saying. So not just where do we need to think ahead for our own planning on infrastructure, but what are our limitations when we can't control those factors, and how would that impact what our future planning might be and where we might envision things going?
And that's where, in my mind, some of the things that we're talking about when it comes to congestion mitigation plans that we have right now. We may not be able to control certain things, but where that development is concerned, maybe there are certain things that we can do, such as offer discounted transit passes, or providing some type of services from the development end. We may not be able to control the roadway, but we might be able to mitigate some impacts of the development on that roadway in some form or the other. We don't have to wait for the comprehensive plan to make that happen. I think it's something that it's a conversation we should be having in the short term.
Great, good. Let's see, we have Mr. Winston and then Mr. Driggs.
Yes. What I was going to say at a suggestion, let's go kind of what Ms. Eisel was getting at. I think we need to go beyond the board games and the card games at this point in time with COVID. And I think we, especially around getting young people involved in the planning and development of the city, I think that has to be a focus because they're going to inherit this. I want us to work with CMS to come up with a way to integrate comprehensive planning into an educational framework. Let's take this disruption as an opportunity. Academic work is going to have to be virtual. And we should look at it that we have teams of experts, neighborhood experts, who are going to be largely tied to their neighborhoods for the coming year, and they're going to really be able to get to know and make suggestions on the zoomed-in scale. So let's use this disruption as a way to leapfrog forward. I really think there's an opportunity here, both for learning, but also for our professional work.
I like it. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Driggs. Thanks, Mr. Winston. Mr. Driggs?
Yeah, am I up?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I wanted to say about this, an impression I had the last time we had a presentation as well. I appreciate that we're taking this opportunity to be better informed about the social priorities and our goals socially than perhaps we have been in the past in our planning process. But I have to tell you, there are times watching these presentations when it feels to me like there's a lot more energy around the notions of equity than there is around the needs of what is still the majority of the population. And so I hope that we can deliver this message in such a way that everybody in Charlotte has a reason to look forward to this. And I think that's reflected in the chair's comments about congestion and things. What I'm hearing is there's this sort of random planning process, the congestion's going on. When am I going to get relief on my roads? And I can't see it here. I don't know exactly what kind of relief on traffic we can look forward to as a result of this whole process. And I just think we need to be very mindful of identifying all the different priorities and acknowledging them when we talk about this. Business interests and all parts of Charlotte, because in many parts of Charlotte, this congestion issue, for example, is the one that comes up the most often. We have to manage our growth in such a way as to not allow the quality of life for other people, not just those who are disadvantaged, to be overly compromised. And what are we doing about that? So I don't have a particular point in the presentation to point to. I just would like to see it address questions that are being asked by all segments of the community. I would mention, by the way, Madam Chair, that these issues like development on Providence Road, I find them the hardest in situations like the one I have right now, where somebody at Providence and Alexander wants to put in 80 townhomes on a 6-acre site. And we are making exceptions to our area plans, to our GDPs or whatever. So we're allowing some of this development to happen in excess of what our current guidelines would permit. And that's when the really serious question to me comes up. Why would you do that? Why would you allow those people to increase the density at that location on a crowded thoroughfare by that much? So when we're talking about something we want to implement next year, these questions need to be acknowledged, and we need to talk about how people can look forward to some sort of relief. I wrote to the guy in Steel Creek this weekend, and I talked about our 2040 plan, and I said, this is what we're doing because of the frustration they're experiencing out there. But I'd like to be able to point to something in this slideshow that they can look at and think, aha, you know, there is some sort of relief is on the way. And I don't see it.
So that's a question that I actually had talked to the mayor about with regards of short-term objectives of this committee, talking about congestion relief, because we can't wait till 2040 or even 2030. It's just a tremendous burden on particular parts of Charlotte right now, particular roads, and it's going to get worse. And so I think that's another topic that we actually have to have a conversation about soon, separate from the comprehensive vision plan, about opportunities that we have, especially during COVID, to try out bus rapid transit pilots. And I've said that before, this is really the time to do that. While we have the opportunity to make mistakes or get feedback about unintended consequences, as we are with, closing some of our streets for pedestrian access, now's the time to do that. So I do hope that, I think it's a separate conversation because there is more urgency around that. And that's something that I've recommended that we have a discussion about in this committee now. So,
Madam Chair, if I may, you know that I have suggested a couple of times, and Ty, you'll remember this too, that we think about some sort of interim congestion overlay or traffic tests that are kind of more useful than the ones that we're applying right now in some of these situations. But the other thing is the 2040 plan is supposed to take effect next year. So we're not talking about, and the UDO will come soon after that. So, we're not talking about things that are going to wait until 2040. We're talking about a course change, the benefits of which should start to become apparent very soon. And I just think this whole process needs to incorporate input from everybody and reflect some of the concerns that we're hearing, in addition to, not instead of, the pressures that we're under socially right now. Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Driggs. And I think that's it for questions, unless anybody else, any other council members had questions? If not, we'll go on to the next topic, which we're going to, excuse me just a second, jump ahead on our agenda and go to the tree canopy action plan. So we have Allison Craig on the line and Tim Porter here in the studio. So do you want to go ahead, Allison, or Tim? Who's going to take it away?
Allison.
I'll start.
Okay.
Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, can you all hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. So I'll kick this off and I'll turn it over to Tim about halfway through. So Tim and I are here today to give you an update on the tree canopy action plan. Next slide. So we've been to this committee before, but I want to just briefly talk about what this effort is. We want to spend some time today going through some of the data that recent data that we have about Charlotte's tree canopy and talk through what findings we've seen there. We want to mention also talk about some canopy programs that we've been working on recently. These are great things the team is doing to contribute to better canopy that can be role models of how we build and expand on these programs. And then finally end with next steps. Next slide. So just wanted to talk through briefly past work on canopy-related items. In 2017, City Council adopted the Urban Forestry Master Plan, and this effort was a plan to lay out the principles for preserving Charlotte's tree canopy, focusing on community engagement and having a shared set of goals. In 2018 and 2018/2019, in response to some 2016 canopy data that came out, we started asking some questions about whether the goal of 50 by 50, whether or not that was attainable. So we explored some other ways to refine those goals, playing around with that tagline that was very popular and inspirational, and determined that we would hold off on making major changes to any potential canopy goals until we really talked about this as part of the overall comprehensive plan. So as you all know, the comprehensive plan, came about, and we ended up pushing the UDO back a little bit to create the vision first before we talked about the UDO. And we wanted to do some quick wins in 2019, and you saw a number of those that were included, things like the TOD approval. We did a sign text amendment, and we also did a tree ordinance text amendment. And we found in this text amendment that even though it only was affecting about 4% of the city, and it didn't change any of the code requirements on those properties that were being developed, just allowed greater flexibility. But we found that there was a lot of passion that emerged out of that, that while we wanted to make sure that we're talking about tree canopy goals as part of the comprehensive plan, it really needed its own side effort. So we decided 2020 would be the year of the tree canopy action plan. Next slide. So it's very important going forward. The 2040 plan is intended to be the foundation for all future policy work. And so it's important to have these canopy discussions now, because there's a number of priorities that the community is saying are important to them. And Alicia talked about a lot of those, but it relates to health and safety, equity, affordable housing. There's a number of things that are important, and tree canopy is a big part of that. And so when we start talking about tree canopy policy and modifying our ordinances, we need to make sure that it's rooted in the key elements, foundational elements of the comprehensive plan. Next slide. So goals of the initiative, starting off, this is really intended to act on the urban forestry master plan. I do not want to insinuate that we're doing something different. This is intended to build on past efforts from 2017 and put those as part of planning initiatives that are underway right now. We want to make sure that we are hearing everyone's voices, and so want to make sure that people know this is who you need to contact if you have questions, if you have concerns, if you want to provide opinions. We want to have very honest dialogues about trees in Charlotte. As I mentioned earlier, there was a lot of passion that came out of the community engagement with the 2019 text amendment, and we recognize that it's a challenge sometimes that we want to grow our city, and we want to grow our city in a sustainable manner. And when there's a lot of rapid growth and change in Charlotte, it's challenging balancing those. So we want to have a very honest dialogue about that. We want to make changes to our codes and our policies to align with these priorities and make sure that any of these decisions are driven by data and best practices. And so we'll talk a little bit about that data in this presentation. Next slide. Key deliverables of this effort, first is some of the things we'll talk about today, as we want to do an analysis of where we are with Charlotte's tree canopy and what has occurred over the last 6 years. But really, first and foremost, we want to deliver policy recommendations that will be incorporated into the comprehensive plan. So right now, Alicia and her team are well underway in developing some of these policies, and they're sort of a placeholder for canopy-related items so that we can have this separate engagement effort and discussion and then feed into the comprehensive plan. And then ultimately, the natural resources framework will of the Unified Development Ordinance will have some of these regulatory concepts that will be developed as part of this effort. And again, a final report summarizing this. So involved in this effort, we've got 22 stakeholders. Next slide, please. I'm sorry to go back. It was a delay on my screen. I apologize. So we've got 22 stakeholders that are part of this effort, and they include people from different neighborhood groups, advocacy organizations, the development community, landscape architects, home builders. There's a variety of different opinions and expertise and knowledge in that room, and their role is to advise our project team. And the project team includes staff, but also we've got 2 consultants that we have as part of this group, and they include the Center for Watershed Protection, which is an applied research body that will help us make policy decisions grounded in science, as well as Urban Canopy Works, which the principal of that particular consulting firm was the project manager for the Urban Forestry Master Plan. And so she brings a lot of continuity and knowledge of Charlotte, knowledge of the players into this process. We think that's important. So they'll advise, provide their expertise. They'll help us devise these policy concepts and guide the overall general public engagement process. So we've had 3 meetings so far. The next one will be this week. Our first 2 meetings, we really spent a lot of time talking about data, some of the data that we'll talk about today. What data do we have? What does the data say? We wanted to make sure that everyone understood how this fit into the larger vision for the city and the comprehensive plan, as well as what regulations we have in place today. This past meeting, we started talking a little bit about canopy policies and had a very robust discussion that I'm sure will continue this week. Next slide. So in 2018, 2019, council had some challenging discussions about the 50 by 50 goal and whether this was something that we expected to keep. Is it inspirational? Absolutely. It's a great rallying cry, great tagline. But some of the questions that we were asking is it actually attainable? Is this something as a growing city that we truly can attain? Is it relevant and place specific? And that's also challenging because it's hard to have a canopy goal that is a one size fits all. We've got lots of different types of places in Charlotte. So we began talking about whether or not we need to tie canopy goals to our different place types. And then finally, is it benefits based? So we want to make sure that this is grounded in things that are benefiting the community and benefiting our city. And this is right now a strictly quantitative goal. We did an initial straw poll from the first stakeholder group. This isn't intended to be representative necessarily of the city, but it's an important sort of starting point for the groups that are involved in this effort. And so what we found is that about 10% of folks said they wanted to keep things the way that it is now and keep the goals the same. 25% said they were unsure, they wanted more information. And about 65% said that they thought we needed to modify these goals in some way and that they were looking forward to developing those as part of this effort. So, let's see. So yeah, I mentioned the first two meetings we talked about data, and then now we're starting to talk about actual canopy goals. Next slide. So as we make decisions, yes, next slide, please, thank you. As we make decisions regarding canopy goals and regulations, it's important to understand the data behind the changes that we've seen. So we want to do some analysis about water quality and how canopy has changed within stream buffers and why. What's happened in our greenways as we've developed those, how does that affect our canopy equity? Alicia mentioned that our community does not experience the benefits of trees in an equitable manner. We know that, and that's something that we need to change so that our canopy is distributed across all of our neighborhoods. Causes, we'll talk about that a little bit later in this presentation. What are the causes for both canopy gain and canopy loss? How does development play a role in that, both new development, infill development, and even just private property decisions that are made on an individual owner's land? And then finally, I've mentioned this before, our canopy goals may not be one size fits all, and so doing an analysis of what modeling future canopy by place type to potentially set place-specific goals. Next slide. So there was a recent study conducted by Trees Charlotte and the University of Vermont looking at the changes in tree canopy for Charlotte from 2012 to 2018. One of the key findings of this is that we have a very robust tree canopy. If you look at the figure to the right, the area that is in sort of that pink purple color, that's where we've had no change in tree canopy. And so that is something to celebrate. That's an important thing to note, that we really do have a very robust, high quality tree canopy in Charlotte. Our consultant, the Center for Watershed Protection, did a review of our code and ordinances, and they found that Charlotte has many policies that are focused on tree conservation and protection. This isn't a surprise, as Charlotte is well known for its urban forest and for the value the community puts on the tree canopy. But there are other findings too. Our residential areas, where we have the largest canopy areas, are the areas that we've seen the greatest canopy loss. Those losses have been large patches, but many are small patches spread throughout Charlotte that if you zoom into that figure, you could probably see little dots of orange throughout there where we've had some loss. We've also seen some right-of-way loss.
Allison,
Yes.
Can I interrupt you for just a second?
Yes. Sure.
Just for everybody online, the meeting per the agenda ends at noon. Our WebEx goes till 12:30. So can the committee members stay on for a little bit? We do have one more agenda item, which should be just pretty brief. It's just a catch-up, but we do want to get through Allison's presentation. So if you can stay with us, the WebEx is open until 12:30, but I don't think we'll have to go that as long.
I'm good.
Thank you. Go ahead, Allison.
Okay, All right, I'll try and get through this as quickly as I can. Right-of-way areas are an important area of influence and management. There's a human experience when you're walking, biking, scooting, driving down the road, and your experience with trees. And this is an area that's going to be challenged just because, Charlotte doesn't control all those roads. There are some that are controlled by NCDOT as well. So this is an area that we're going to have to work on. Next slide. So looking at Charlotte across the entire city, I know these colors are a little hard to read, but if you sort of benchmark yourself with South Charlotte, that particular color is showing a 5 to 10% decline in canopy coverage. And as you get into the darker oranges, that's a greater loss, and increases are in green. And these are some of the areas that we're looking at. Tim and I are actually talking about this morning. So we need to learn from what those areas in green are. Those are really just incremental canopy growth in neighborhoods and other areas. And so what are we doing right there that we can emulate in other parts of the city? Next slide. So Charlotte is predominantly residential. More than 50% of Charlotte falls into that category. So it's not surprising that the distribution of canopy by land use also shows that it is predominantly, most of our canopy is in those residential areas. Next slide. So if most of our canopy is in those residential areas, it's not surprising to find that the most significant loss was in those areas. So I want to take a couple slides in this presentation to look into better understand what happened between 2012 and 2018. So the study that was conducted is very informative as it tells us where we have challenges and opportunity to improve, but a critical part of the analysis that is underway now involves why. So for today, we're going to dive into the residential data in this presentation as it does represent the largest category of loss to better understand some of those potential whys. And before we move on, I just wanted to mention too, because this has been talked about in this committee before, but when we talk about residential, which is more than 50% of Charlotte, of that residential area, more than 80% of that is zoned for single family. Next slide. So this is an important intersection with the comprehensive plan. So key themes emerging out of the comprehensive plan discussions are around affordable places to live, diversifying single family areas. Alicia talked about this in the last presentation. We want to have different types of residential areas to include duplexes and tris and quads, accessory dwelling units, making sure we're building the missing middle. And as we make decisions in the comprehensive plan that may densify our residential areas, we need to understand how we can best balance the need for housing with greening our city. So we'll be working with the comprehensive plan team alongside the stakeholder groups as we talk about different place types and potentially setting different canopy goals by place type if that's appropriate. Next slide. So I want to just talk about how single family is currently regulated in the city. And I'm going to just describe briefly these three sort of buckets, I'll call them, then I'll turn it over to Tim to talk about how each of them is regulated. So first I'm going to mention single family subdivision, so the first column, and that's there's a parcel, you subdivide it into 2 or more lots and develop single family homes on that. An initial analysis of subdivision data and looking at building permits, tree maintenance data, we found that about 22% of the residential canopy loss occurred in subdivisions. So there's more occurring outside of the subdivision process. The other two buckets I'll call first will be infill development. So this is you buy a parcel, maybe there's a structure on it that you add onto it, maybe you tear that down and build a new home. There's a lot of infill development that is occurring in the city of Charlotte right now that I'm sure you all are aware of. And then the third bucket I'll call private property owner decisions. And so this is homeowner who maybe a storm came through and they've got a tree that's challenged on their lot, they take that tree down, or maybe there's a tree leaning on their property, they want to protect their property. There's a lot of decisions that are made on an individual home site that really do impact our canopy, whether that's a gain or a loss. The recent study did note that while they did not identify all the individual tree loss that occurred in Charlotte, they did say there are thousands of examples of individual trees being removed with no apparent signs of construction. So, but we've also seen areas of growth in single family lots. So this is just an area that I think that we need to look more closely at. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Tim and he can kind of explain how each of these areas are regulated.
Thanks, Allison. So that first bucket of single-family subdivision, that would trigger development requirements that a project would have to go through city permitting. The three main areas are perimeter trees, which are street trees. New subdivisions have to plant trees. They can also preserve existing trees if they are existing. Internal trees really apply mostly to commercial development, but sometimes a single-family subdivision project may have commercial elements per a regulatory perspective, such as a pool area on a common space property, parking spaces near a trailhead, or something like that. If that's the case, then there would be a requirement to have internal trees planted in close proximity to those sites to ensure certain intents in the tree ordinance are met. Higher canopy coverage to reduce temperatures and things like that. Tree save is a major component of single-family subdivision, and a project has to set aside at least 10% tree save, which is a natural area type setting of preserved existing trees. If there are no trees to preserve internally to the subdivision, then they have to plant back 10%. So if a subdivision is 100 acres, then 10 acres would have to be tree save area. There are some density incentives within the Charlotte Tree Ordinance that if a project provides more than 10% tree save, there's incremental levels of the bonus here. Density can be reduced on lots, and you can increase how many home sites are provided in a project. Infill development is not regulated by the city. As Allison described, the different types of infill. There may be permits needed from a building standards perspective. That would include demolition, ranging from that all the way to electrical and plumbing. There are no tree protection requirements in that type of permitting. The city doesn't review that. If there are existing city trees out front along a road, those would have to be protected during development. There may be some existing tree save on the property that would have to be protected, but no new regulatory requirements would have to be met, or there's no process to go through. Also, there's no blanket protection of private trees across the city. There are some historic district covenances, but by and large, there's no blanket protection on private trees. Moving on to the next slide, please. We have a lot of data historically and current regarding tree canopy, and as Allison said, there's still more ongoing right now. This is a snapshot to show you some of the recent results. East Charlotte was chosen as a good image for this slide because it illustrates the multiple types of canopy losses and gains, but also it shows that tree canopy management and goal setting is very complex and a nuanced thing, and balancing tree canopy with other interests such as housing or development growth to support medical care, schools, equity and services is very challenging. It's difficult to see, but the orange blobs represent canopy loss. Green blobs are canopy gains. As you move down the right side of the slide with the red lines pointing to each loss or gain, you can see there's various types of projects impacting canopy. Assisted living facility, there's a single family subdivision, the reserve at Canyon Hills. There's natural growth of existing canopy in some areas, more single family, and at the bottom there's Lawrence Orr Elementary School. I'd like to point out near the top right of that image, the green blob next to the Canyon Hills subdivision. There's a lot of green growth that represents a city-owned property that was acquired in 2016 for conservation through the Tree Canopy Preservation Program. It was a site that was clear-cut for timber management around 2009, and now represents a good example of how preservation programs, we'll talk about this a little bit in a few minutes, can increase tree canopy. It's very difficult to see on that slide, but there are thousands of examples of incremental individual trees that have grown canopy. There's also many more of canopy loss that are related to aging canopy, health issues, individual property owner decisions on how they want to manage their property. So we can move on to the next slide. So this is a good example of there's some more work to be done on our canopy analysis, and it's ongoing right now. In Greer Heights, you can see in this image here, this is a snip of the street network there. Again, the orange blobs are canopy loss. The yellow points are building permit data from the county, and the green tree icons represent city tree maintenance work orders, specifically for removal or storm damage related work in that area from 2012 to 2018. So this is an area, Allison mentioned, in addition to single-family subdivision development, that accounts for some level of canopy loss. How much, we're trying to figure out how much we can dig into this data to find if you can correlate permits and canopy or storm damage to canopy loss. This work is ongoing. We should have some good data in the next few weeks to figure out if there's a strong case to have a conclusion one way or the other. And we can go on to the next slide. This is an example of Myers Park. So in these urban core neighborhoods around Uptown, a lot of very large trees, a lot of canopy loss. There's an aging canopy issue. There's also a lot of infill development. So when you think about tree canopy management and goal setting, it's very nuanced. It's a complex equation. We're trying to get as best a grasp on every variable in that equation as we can in order to go back to our stakeholders and the public to say, here's what's going on. How do we move forward with a canopy goal?
Can I ask, are we going to get this presentation? Because it's really hard to see the building permits in particular. I'm surprised to see that in Myers Park. I noticed in your bigger thing, South Charlotte had, it looked like the most canopy loss, but from 5 years of rezoning cases, it sure doesn't seem to me like that's where the development is going. So it would be interesting to get more information on those numbers, in particular here in Greer Heights, to find out if that's disease. I mean, there's been some massive trees that have come down in those two neighborhoods in the past couple of years. So I think that's really important information.
Yeah, we can provide that. There's a little bit of digging and analysis needed. There's tens of thousands of permits, and we have to sort through internal renovations and plumbing, trying to determine which permit types likely could impact canopy. But yeah, absolutely, we can dig into that and provide this analysis in this presentation. Again, nuanced and complex. We can move on to the next slide, please. There are many programs in place, regulatory, strategic. Just an example of innovative, creative type of program that can check a lot of boxes is the city's Urban Arboretum Trail Initiative, which is a component of the larger tree canopy preservation program. A multi-pronged approach is needed for tree canopy management, and many individual, specific, simple programs can help, but creative, flexible programs such as the Arboretum Trail can have a broader impact to help grow and protect canopy. This is a program that acquires properties through developer paid fees and commercial permitting, acquires properties to preserve and protect tree canopy and provide green space and engagement for communities to help experience tree canopy. This is an image of a site plan for Johnson & Wales Pollinator Garden. It's in the 3rd Ward area of Uptown. It's a remnant piece of public street right-of-way that was left over after a capital project that realigned this intersection. So while this wasn't a property that was technically purchased, this program is managed by General Services jointly with the Planning Department. So collectively, control over that piece of right-of-way was shifted to General Services for the purposes of the Arboretum Trail program. We worked with the community to develop a site plan. We listened to their interest. So all the really interesting colors on there represent different types of wildflower plantings or herbs. And we connected with Johnson & Wales to kind of have that theme of cooking. And we planted some more street trees. So that's going to be a public pocket park. This is our first pilot project, so our first site. And it ties in nicely with placemaking in public space. It has specific engagement opportunities on site, signage, educational opportunities for the residents in the area to experience. There's furniture on this property that was built out of existing, city trees that fell down during a storm. So there's a sustainable type of carbon sequestration element there, more of an educational component really than really trying to sequester carbon on a large level. So it checks a lot of boxes, and it's a great way to look forward in tree canopy goal setting to connect to other interests that could include housing or transportation, transit type planning, because this is a program that acquires land for conservation. Next slide, please. And this is just a higher level view of the pilot project's trail network. As you can see, it connects to multiple neighborhoods surrounding the uptown northwest corridor, connects to McCrory Heights, Oak Lawn Park, moves across 77 and moves down towards into uptown, looking to connect in the Double Oaks area down into the city's Elmwood Cemetery, which is essentially a cemetery functioning as a park today. And there's been multiple community engagement actions going on with this program as well. So next slide, please. And the Tree Canopy Preservation Program, as I mentioned earlier, is the umbrella program for the Arboretum Trail, and it acquires land through through fees paid during commercial permitting. And we partner with conservation entities such as Mecklenburg County, Parks and Rec, or the Catawba Lands Conservancy. Initially, this program looked to protect land, kind of set it aside in a very non-publicly accessible way, but it's evolving to provide much more tree canopy experiences, looking at building trail networks, connecting to greenway trails, Carolina Thread Trail as an example. So it's just a canopy program of note there, and I will kick this back to Allison to talk about the future of the project.
Okay, we just have probably a few minutes left that we can, and I do want to see if anyone has questions, but so go ahead, Allison.
Sure. The next slide, actually skip the next slide and I'll get us right here. We can sort of pause here for a second. Just to let you know where we are right now, we're looking at the current data. We mentioned that before. There's a much more detailed analysis of the whys and other things that were mentioned in this committee meeting that we're doing now. We're going to begin peer city reviews and understanding what they're doing in other cities across the United States, and find ways that, innovative ideas that we can implement. We're in the middle of stakeholder engagement right now, and we'll begin public engagement late summer through drive-ins, neighborhood virtual roundtables, and other ways to engage the public. Next slide. And then just real quick, again, this fits in. This is intended to be a companion document to the comprehensive plan, much like the strategic mobility study, and both feeding into the comprehensive plan as well as helping us develop the Unified Development Ordinance. So with that, I'm happy to take questions.
We have a question from Mr. Winston.
Thank you. I think it's more of a comment or a request. Single-family zoning seems to be a culprit for many of the development issues that we are trying to solve. From this presentation, it seems that there's a need to adjust single-family zoning requirements for canopy preservation and growth. The same can be said for affordable housing, infrastructure investment, et cetera, et cetera. So, Ms. J.O., I would really ask, when can council expect to receive some type of recommendations on changes to single-family zoning and the corresponding city codes and ordinances that govern the trying to reach?
Mr. J.O. is happy he has a mask on right now. But we can see it in his eyes.
Yeah, good question. That's really part of the recommendations we're bringing forward to council as part of the comprehensive plan. I hate to constantly refer to the comprehensive plan, but if it's going to be a North Star, it has to catch all as much as possible. And so we've got a couple bold ideas, right? A few bold ideas that we are looking at right now internally, and that's one of them. But we want to make sure that not only do we get to present this to council, but we also get to share this with some of our key partners in the community before we share this with you. Again, that will be part of what we'll talk about in September, but also when we deliver a final draft document to you in the fall, you will see how we break that down. And you are right. Exclusive single-family zoning has been a major issue for not just the tree canopy, but also affordable housing, transportation, and a lot of things that we do in the city today. But how can we craft policies around creating a city where we have housing diversity? But we just have to make sure that it's also data-driven and very important that it's not just an anecdotal. So we've got to look at everything from a numbers perspective. We think we have good information, but there are certain areas right now internally where we're not even sure how we're measuring the percentage of single families on, whether it's the housing, whether it's based on detached single family or just, with attached single family. So we've got to have our own consistency in-house, and then we'll be able to share that information with you. But you're very right. But sometime towards the end of this year, you will see that policy clearly spelled out.
Thank you. If we don't have any other questions, I want to move along and just get a quick...
Madam Chair?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Driggs.
Yeah. I think the focus in all this, I appreciate the presentation. I will note we allocated 10 minutes to this topic and it took 25 to get through the slides. So, Madam Chair, this meeting is a little over-programmed, and it's difficult for members of the committee to attend a meeting where the presentation of the slides basically takes up all the time that's been allocated for the meeting. So I just hope that, I made this comment in other committees before, as we structure these meetings, there's got to be an allowance for us to talk. My comment about the tree canopy thing is I've been uneasy since I joined council about the 50 by 50 because it's a great ambition and aspiration, but the problem with unrealistic goals is that when you fail to meet them, you don't have anything else. So once you're off that track, you're in no man's land. And I think it's important that we have a realistic and accountable timeline, not just going out 30 years, but 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and that we come up with a program, the success of which can be assessed on an ongoing basis. And I personally feel that is going to entail acknowledging that trying to be at 50% in 2050, given the growth we anticipate, Charlotte, is really not realistic. And the other thing I would caution against is we're going to get a lot of resistance from the advocates, the tree advocates, as we kind of acknowledge some of these realities. And we shouldn't allow ourselves to be pressured into setting goals that are unworkable, because that can happen. I mean, they'll be there, they're going to be very strong, their passion is commendable, but once again, if you have unworkable goals, the result is that you don't have any real accountability for anything. All you know is that you didn't do what you said. And the other point about this is there was an element, I think, that came up during that 4% text amendment of dilution. So you don't want everything that looks green from the air to be counted as a tree, or you want to be very mindful of distinctions between mature trees and new growth, types of vegetation, and what that might look like. So we don't want to try and achieve some other goal by substituting things other than what we really, traditionally understand to be our tree canopy. And I think that, again, if we're supposed to grow by 50% going out to 2040, I think we can be very aggressive about trees and we can protect what we have. But it's hard for me to imagine that we would be at 50%, frankly, 10 years after that. So those are my comments. I like the work you're doing, and I like the amount of time that's going into breaking this down and looking at it in more detail. But I think the focus point a lot of the time is that 50 by 50 slogan. And again, I'd like to see a timeline with accountable goals all along. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Driggs. And point well taken. we need to look at these presentations and say this wasn't going to take 10 minutes. I think it was worth going over this time because we've deferred this conversation. Yet as a council, we keep saying that the tree canopy discussion is an important one. So thank you for your patience with that. And I think it is worth noting that we need to really have better expectations around that next time. Lastly, then, if we can just spare a couple minutes, Taiwo is going to give us an update on Mayor Gant's mobility task force.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So you do have a presentation and you can walk through that. I think the bulk of the presentation is based on the results of the questionnaires that we actually shared with the Mobility Task Force last week. Some of those results are quite interesting. But I'll share with you that we met last week, Thursday. Maybe you can go to the next slide and the next slide after that. So this slide here. So we met last Thursday, again, being the third time that we will meet. And you can see the distribution of the task force in terms of geography, but also in terms of gender and ethnicity. But we make sure that we have representations from different parts of the city, the county, considering what we're undertaking. We started this meeting with the Silver Line update. That's the most regional of all the pieces of work that we are doing as part of the task force. So in order to learn from what other communities are doing, we brought in representatives from Austin, Texas, Nashville, Tennessee, and Broward County, Florida, who have been through this within the last 2-3 years. One was an example of, all of them were great plans, but what was an example of a great plan that did not do well at the poll? That's the Nashville experience. One was a great plan that did very well, surprisingly, at the polls, and that was Broward County for $15-point-some billion. Nashville was about $9 billion. And the Austin one is going to the ballot in November this year for between $3 to $9 billion. All different experiences, different examples, but very passionate communities just like ours here in Charlotte. We're moving rolling right along. The goal at the end of the day is to deliver what we call a transformation and mobility network to Mayor Lyles in December, and then to the council ultimately. Sometime in the fall, like we have said before, Mayor Gant himself is going to present to this group here and also present to the council. We're working with everyone right now with regards to definitions of different things. What do they think about what are the greatest areas of need? I think it was Alicia that mentioned that during the comprehensive plan presentation. But we also want to make sure that when you define that transformation and mobility network, it's not just a mix of different projects that have no impact. It's got to be impactful. It could be maybe one large project and a set of small projects, a lot of small projects, but the most important thing is that they've got to be impactful, and they've got to be about equity, they've got to be about sustainability, they've got to be about connectivity for our city and indeed our region. Looking at the silver line, looking at the red line, looking at the gold line, different bus rapid transit connections, but goes beyond transit, talks about greenways, bike trails, pedestrian accessibility to different parts of the city, including also our sidewalks today, our cycle links, and all of that. So that's what this group discussed last week. In our next meeting, which will be August 20, we're going to be having more of interaction among ourselves. Geraldine Gardner of the Charlottenc.gov will be speaking to the group about the Connect Beyond, and then the group will have a conversation among themselves about what this transformation and mobility network actually looks like. So once again, that's the update. We will constantly present, email to you links when we have the next meeting, so you have the opportunity to really participate. The presentations are always on the Charlotte Moves Task Force website, on the city's web page, so for you to be able to review them after presentations and to ask questions as necessary. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Winston.
Madam Mayor, can we get the slides? Are they going to be up on the website? For the
Yes,
committee?
Donata's going to send us out.
All right, thank you.
Okay, with that, any other
We have
questions?
a I did have a question.
Go ahead.
Well, a suggestion, I know, as I mentioned earlier, especially the conversations that the community has been having since June, people are really trying to figure out some restorative ways that the city, in particular municipalities, can look towards. And one of the suggestions that I continue to have is around our transportation and mobility investments. The difficulty that we have as a city is that, the development that we want to see, we're often waiting for the market to come around, and we know how impatient the market can be and how impatient the needs of the people are. So I would suggest that this mobility group find ways to integrate to some of the organizations and entities that are really compelling conversations and actions around social justice. I really do believe that this is the intersecting point where we as a city can provide real solutions for these systemic and generational issues. And if we don't take advantage of this now is the time to do that, to take advantage of the inertia that is happening.
Thank you very much. And with that, I think we had a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
I'll second it too.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody, for your flexibility this morning. Meeting adjourned.
All right. Talk to you later.